Hello, everyone. I'm Krista Moore, and welcome to the Krista Moore Talk Show. This is brought to you by K-Coaching and ID Growth. This talk show format is a new way to learn from industry experts and thought leaders as they share their growth ideas and their success stories. Many of you may know my guest today. His name is Steve Kahle, and he was one of the co-founders of Red Cheetah, which many of you may be familiar with. But today, I'm happy to report that Steve is living his dream as founder of Grey Wolf Workflow. And he's really relentlessly passionate about helping professionals reduce their stress and do more of the work that's important and the work that really matters. So he does this by helping others remove unnecessary distractions and kind of develop proactive habits. So I had a chance to speak with him earlier this week, and I'm really excited to have him on our show today because I think he has so much relevant content and information to share. So I'd like to welcome Steve to the show. Steve, are you there? Hello?
I am, Krista. Hi there.
Hey, how are you?
I'm thrilled to be alive. How about you?
Yeah, it's good to see you.
You too.
So, I would love to kind of just hear a little bit more about your personal journey. So take me from where you were in terms of, say, co-founder of Red Cheetah, to really being able to find this passion and to kind of live your dream a bit by having your own company around productivity. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd love to, Krista. So kind of going back a little bit further, for me it started when I was 12 years old, living in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I'm starting a lawn care service. Ended up hiring two of my best friends over the years, and I learned what it was like to, number one, try to be really productive, because mowing lawns in Texas heat is really, really hot. And so we did things that were very innovative. Like, we realized that if we sharpened our mower blades every single morning, that our mowers went faster, we used less fuel, and we were able to mow lawns faster and quicker and deliver a better product. Rather than kind of tearing the grass, our blades would cut the grass. And so I really learned early that productivity, collaboration really mattered. And then kind of leaving that, I found myself going to school at the University of South Florida in Tampa and got my degree, and I wanted to get back into self-employment, came back to Texas and started in my one-bedroom apartment a company called White Lion Interactive. And this is back in the mid-90s when the web was just starting to get a lot of momentum. And all of a sudden I started to see email onto the scene. And all of a sudden the speed of business really started to accelerate. And I realized that I was oftentimes operating in this reactionary state. I wanted to serve my team and serve my clients really well, and it was difficult as this email medium accelerated the speed of business. And so I realized that I needed to kind of go back from my roots in college. I was fascinated with organizational psychology. I wanted to know what the latest in science and behavioral psychology said about the modern day work environment. So I started to codify best practices. And what I realized, Krista, is everybody on this call, you included, we're all project managers. And if we started to train people like project managers, we're able to serve each other better and serve our clients better and deliver a better product and service.
Yeah. You know what I really liked about that story, Steve, is when you were talking about when you were 12 or 11 and had that lawnmower service, I had once heard that if you think back on what you were doing when you were 10, 11, 12, that's who you are at your core. Anything prior to that was influenced by parents, and then anything after that was influenced by peer pressure. So that's what that made me think of. So here you are, this young kid, really enjoying the whole concept and idea of productivity, right, and starting your own business and being an entrepreneur. And fast forward, that's kind of where you are today. So I love hearing that, for sure.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm sure you have come across is there are some common maybe themes or in terms of the biggest obstacles that are truly getting in the way of most people being absolutely productive. So what would you say they are, maybe top three?
Yeah, top three. I think first it's an understanding that there's a big educational chasm right now. Like, if you were to ask a millennial coming out of college, tell me how your degree has prepared you to handle more than 120 emails every single day, you kind of get this deer in the headlights kind of view. So the problem is that we haven't done a really good job training professionals and knowledge workers to thrive in the modern day work environment. So it's also too a realization when you look at brain science, right? The basal ganglia in our brain stem, that's the part of the brain that handles habits. And our brain is kind of a supercomputer within a supercomputer, and it's constantly looking for ways to conserve energy. And how the brain does that in part is by creating habits. And 40% of what we do, Krista, on a normal daily basis at home and in the work environment is based on habits. So it's first realizing if you're in a state where you're constantly reacting, you realize you probably need to completely recalibrate the way you approach work and taking methodologies and frameworks that are proven to work. For example, we're going to talk about finish line planning and using our calendar as a doing list. That's a great way to be able to be more proactive and allocate time and create a flexible plan so we can do more of the work that matters. So overall, it's a realization that we need to figure out a better way forward so that we can operate more in that proactive lane.
Yeah, you know, when you were talking about education and how, you know, we don't learn this in college, right?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on the best way to kind of recalibrate or get some education on what we can do better or different to be more productive?
Well, one way is to follow a lot of productivity experts out there. That's what I did for about 20 years. In addition to looking at what the science was saying and behavioral psychology was saying, and there's some amazing options when you go to YouTube. You do a search, it's about 1.2 million results. I think it's about 20 million results when you search Google. Another way too is, like, for example, I have put together a boot camp. It's called the Proactive Lane Boot Camp, and it's Special Forces productivity know-how for overwhelmed professionals. And it's a 4-week series that teaches professionals how to identify all these frameworks to then start being able to use these disciplines and this rigor to be able to then put themselves in this proactive lane. All it takes is basically, you know, small steps. I like to how you have used, Krista, a lot in your speaking about small practical steps. So I help to identify what those steps are and create a roadmap where we can do ultimately much more of the work that matters.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if you can maybe tell us some examples of some practical small steps that our listeners can learn today that they could put into practice pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I want to share with the tip that you shared in our discussion was the idea of color coding your calendar. So one, you know, our calendar is a really, really big part of how we're going to operate. I want to tell a quick story too about Mike Rowe. This is probably probably top 5 most impactful moment in my career. So Mike Rowe, the man behind Dirty Jobs, was sharing his experience doing these blue-collar jobs, and he was talking about, and he was addressing professionals like us, and he said, look, you professionals, these hard-working blue-collar workers are so significantly or happier than you, and I'll tell you why. And I wanted to know what that answer was, and I'm kind of leaning in going, well, Mike, why is that? He said, because there's a clear finish line to their day. And if we're cleaning 12 septic tanks, it makes sense. On the 12th tank, we're done, right? We can then check that complete, and now we're going to transition cleanly into being with our friends and family. Where the problem with knowledge work, this information economy, is that we're constantly kind of on a treadmill and there's not a real clear break. So yeah, for me, that was a big moment to say, okay, hey, we can think differently. And as a leader of a digital agency, I realized, how can I create a culture, and even for myself, create that same finish line concept.
You know, when you were telling that story, I'm thinking about that wonderful feeling when you leave the office and it's like, oh my gosh, I got done. Like, I finished everything. It's just it's a great sense of accomplishment, but it also was a major reduced stressor, right?
Big time.
And we were talking about the whole color coding the calendar, and I want to talk a little bit about that particular concept in general. And then I'd like to hear more about the finish line that is, like, I guess, a program that you like to teach and train people on. So first, let's talk about the calendar. What would be some recommendations? Most of us are on Outlook, and we're inundated with email and keeping track of our day-to-day activities. What would be some best practices there?
Yeah, so what I find with most professionals is, using Outlook, and I'm a big fan of the tool. Some may be using Google Calendar, but the concepts are the same. Most professionals typically have some scheduled meetings and a few other events on their calendar, but they're not using it as their doing list. And this is where you can really break and move into that elite professional status by having a realistic plan. So Dwight D. Eisenhower back in 1957 gave a speech, and he said, plans are worthless, but planning is everything. And that ties into how we plan our calendar. When he says plans are worthless, it means that in a military context, when the first shot is fired, typically the plan is going to radically change, so you need to be able to adapt. And so what we need as professionals is every day matters. When we're looking at our goals and our aspirations and all the tasks that we need to accomplish, we're doing a lot of things. And to get that sense of satisfaction, Krista, when we leave, we need a good plan. So the idea is to use our calendar as our doing list, and pardon me, and ideally the day before, create some blocks of time that allocate where our priority time is, leaving gaps because we're going to have curveballs that happen, and ideally find a color coding system so as you go through the day, you're fleshing out your calendar as you go, another key move that elite professionals make, and that way at the end of the day, you can simply look back at your calendar and see exactly where your time was invested, where your time leaks were, and where things went over, and then use that knowledge in this life skill of then planning out your next day, and you're going to get better and better every single day at it.
Yeah, I can be a great testimony to that whole concept, because I think that I started doing that about 5 years ago, and I must have heard it in some kind of time management seminar or something. But if you looked at my calendar today, you would see every color of the rainbow. And purple's personal, and pink is my office products, women in leadership, and green is revenue generating, yellow is new business building. So when I'm looking visually, which I'm a visual, look at my calendar, I can see where I'm spending my time. But the other thing that I heard you say that I learned the hard way is putting those gaps and making sure that I'm not overextending myself or having over-exaggerated expectations of how quickly I could get something done, so that calls don't run into each other, or that I end up kind of just being behind on Monday, for the rest of the week.
Right.
So I think those are great tips to offer people. You were also referring to the finish line, and I don't really understand that concept all that much, and I'd like you to describe it a little bit to our audience.
I'd love to. So our goal, Krista, is 8 days out of 10, we want to be able to leave with that sense of completion of, hey, I got it all done. And it's no wonder when our calendar doesn't look very planned out, is it any wonder that we're not getting the key things done? Because we do need to put together a plan for the day, because every day matters as it relates to achieving our goals and our aspirations. And so the idea is to look at everyone needs to have a task list. And I recommend going electronic, because you're going to have a lot and be able to categorize and prioritize and prune that task list constantly to align with your goals, aspirations, and your key job responsibilities. And so the idea is to use that intelligence, kind of the dashboard of your task list, to then plan out your day. And again, leaving those blocks of time in between to allow for the curveballs. This extends also very importantly to email, because you mentioned email. And everybody right now typically is struggling with email, and we're constantly behind, and it's also dramatically impacting cognitive resources and negatively impacts our sleep, because our brain knows that we're getting further and further behind. So what we need to do is have a realistic plan of how much time we need for email, how much time we need for our key tasks, and we also need to figure out, based on our personality and our approach, most people do better planning their really intensive cognitive work in the morning hours, and they can do more of their lightweight reporting type work in the afternoon. So putting together a plan, color coding is highly recommended, and leaving those gaps will allow us to start to hit the mark more often.
So what advice would you give us for those that really struggle with getting the amount of emails in one day, managing those emails, and actually leaving the day feeling like you're done, or that you got that inbox down to a manageable level? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, my first engagement as a productivity strategist was with an attorney, and his lead name on his building, really successful. And he basically said he hated his job. I'm like, well, why do you hate your job? He's like, every single day I'm getting further and further behind. And he had over 22,000 emails in his inbox, which is not uncommon. So first it's to realize how much time, we need to first make sure that we do an inventory and that we are relentless about removing any emails that no longer provide value. So unsubscribing from emails that no longer give us the content that we need. So being really aware of that, and then realizing that for most of us, we're going to need between 60 and 90 minutes every single day to handle general email correspondence. And so what we can do is have a target, and I call it inbox 7. Our goal is to leave the workday with 7 or fewer emails total in our inbox. And if we create, Krista, I recommend starting with 3 email sprints throughout the day. So 3 30-minute blocks of time that we're focused just on email. And the key word too there is focus. We're not going to check our email while we're doing some other important work. We're going to allocate time on our calendar to then really focus on handling that email. And if we identify and have these 3 blocks of time and we protect that time, we're going to be able to leave the office more times than not with 7 or fewer. Now, like right now, my inbox is I think I'm probably at 60 or 70. I got behind, but I'm going to allocate more time and get back to equilibrium while I'll be close to inbox 7, where I can then serve my team and my clients much better.
Yeah. I like the idea of those 30-minute sprints, because when you were saying 60 to 90 minutes a day on email, I'm thinking, gosh, I don't have the patience to sit there in one solid, time frame to work through email. And I also love the advice of not being focused on it at that time and not just trying to multitask, because that's just another stress inducer, I think.
Sure.
Something else that you mentioned that I have really been doing a lot of reading about lately has to do with time management, but in a different sense. It's energy management. And you started talking about that a little bit, and I actually have this book that I wanted to show everyone, because I'm highlighting almost every other word. It's called The Power of Full Engagement. And I know you and I spoke about this. I believe you've read this as well. But it's really connected with me in a lot of ways. It's written by a sports coach as well as a business coach. And they're talking about managing your performance around your high energy time of the day. So I know you've done a lot of research on this as well and have some thoughts around energy management. What would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I like that a lot, Krista. I think overall, think about your cognitive energy level when you leave the workday, and think about kind of that, cell phone battery indicator. Are you like at red, or do you have, in the middle? Do you have plenty of energy? I mean, for most of us, when we're leaving the workday, we're starting the most important job, right? It's being with our wives, husbands, and kids. And so I realized along my journey that I was coming home typically mentally spent, and I realized that I needed to completely recalibrate the way I approached energy. And one of the stories along that way was listening to Russell Foster, who is a circadian neuroscientist, and he basically said sleep is the single most important behavior that we do. Krista, if you and I get really good sleep, we are 3 times more creative the next day, and we are all creatives. We may not be designing art or web pages, but all of us are troubleshooting. We're all creative in our own right, and so sleep is a really keystone mechanic and behavior that will allow us to do more of the work that matters. And also, too, the big deal here is thinking about our cognitive load throughout the day. I mean, we're not going to go to the gym and work out on the same machine 8 hours straight. We would basically fatigue our muscles and wouldn't get a good workout. And so even elite athletes know that we typically our sleep patterns and work patterns are about a line. They're about 90 minutes, this ultradian rhythm. And so if we're working in 90-minute cycles in the morning and taking like a break and transitioning to something else and then coming back, we're going to hit a real high performance state. And then in the afternoon, some of you may have heard of a Pomodoro break, which is about you're working for 25 minutes and breaking for 5. What I find that works really well, getting really good sleep, snacking well throughout the day, eating clean throughout the day, and then working in 90-minute sprints in the morning and the afternoon, working in about 30-minute sprints. What I'm finding, Krista, is I'm leaving the workday, coming home to my family with plenty of cognitive energy in the tank to do a really good job serving them.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm hoping that the audience is really listening to this concept in terms of energy management. So often we'll have businesses and executives calling wanting coaching and business coaching or personal leadership coaching, and one of the first things that they say is, I need help with time management. And after we dig into it, that's kind of just a something we hear very, very frequently, and it seems almost a little bit of a cop-out. Like, I've got time management. I need to figure out time management. Well, there's a whole lot more going on than just the time management concept. And often it is related to energy management and performance. So there's a bit of kind of wellness coaching that goes along with that often. Something else, I have my water. Did we talk about water? How important that is for energy management? So I'm going to also be a good case study. On August 1st, I intentionally, after reading this book, started drinking way more water than I normally do, and also getting 8 hours of sleep, which I was more accustomed to 5 or 6, and also exercising on a more regular basis and eating healthy. So I started this whole new routine. And I can tell you that I am way more in tune with my own body and when I am at my peak performance during the day. So I just want to encourage everyone to maybe try something different. If you like any of those ideas, getting more sleep, drinking more water, eating more healthy, as part of your kind of productivity enhancement regime. You also have talked a lot about companies that you've gone on site, you've worked with the leadership team, you've worked with the leaders in the companies. I'd like you to maybe share some stories on what you've been able to do to help businesses be more productive.
Yeah, I'd love to, Krista. You know, these concepts are really close to my heart because they've really transformed me as a business leader, as a husband, as a father, as a Christ follower. I mean, it's been a really amazing, transformative journey, and I love being able to have an impact on other people's lives and to serve them well. So one story that sticks out to me is serving Alex Dadadakis, who is division president for MHI, a really large home builder. They actually built our house back in 2006, where I got a chance to work with Alex. And I got a chance to take his leadership team through my Proactive Lane boot camp. And again, Special Forces productivity know-how for overwhelmed professionals. So I'm really, dialed into this Special Forces piece, and it better deliver big results with that kind of a name. And I guess one of my favorite takeaways was Patty Schofel, who leads the office towards the end, I think it was session 3 or session 4. She basically said, on behalf of this entire team, I want to thank you for changing our lives. And it just I just sat there, and I needed about 5 seconds to just really feel the impact of what she was saying. That was an amazing moment, and hearing from Alex how he was able to be much more proactive. And another really cool moment that kept on giving was I was invited to one of his son's birthday parties, and his wife Leslie pulled me aside, looked me straight in the eye, and she said, "Steve, thank you for giving me my husband back." And so just another good confirmation that this content, I mean, it's definitely working for me, and I've seen it have an impact on many others. But to have that impact where I know that I'm really impacting, not just Alex, but also his wife and ultimately his family and his business was an amazing moment.
Yeah, I love that story. Thanks for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
And it makes me think about just what we said at the beginning. You were saying about recalibrate, educate. I mean, if we want things to be different, then we've got to change how we're doing it. And it's not going to just change miraculously, right?
That's correct.
And so if we're stressed out, or we're tired of all those emails in the inbox, or we're leaving at the end of the day and feeling unfulfilled because we didn't complete things, we've got to change how we're running our lives and our body. So I wanted to see if you had any maybe last tips and techniques that you might give our audience before we hang up today.
You bet, Krista. One thing too that I want us to think about is, I think in the American culture, it's all about sort of success at any cost. And I'm going to challenge everybody that we can be successful, happy, and healthy. We need to fire on all 3 cylinders. And so kind of to wrap things up, definitely energy management is at the core. We want to be able to deliver our best, like as you mentioned, getting the right amount of sleep. And just briefly on that, even our military is figuring this out, that if we go 6 days of 6 hours of sleep or less, or if we miss a sleep cycle, it is like having a 20% cognitive impairment. It's like having a blood alcohol content of 0.08, which in Texas would get you locked up. So sleep is definitely a cornerstone behavior. So getting enough sleep, snacking well throughout the day. We have this amazing supercomputer of a brain with 100 billion neurons, and if we're fueling ourselves well and we're taking breaks. I used to think, Krista, that taking breaks was for wimps. I want to come in, work really hard, get my work done so I can get to my family faster. Now I take the breaks intentionally. It's on my calendar. I have scheduled breaks. Also, too, I started meditating for 10 minutes during the day. What a massive change. I'm letting my brain completely relax and able to hit the power band come 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So number one is sleep, getting breaks, eating well, and then looking at our calendar, creating our doing list, creating our email sprint, and having a good task list. Those are kind of the fundamentals to really build on to move from this reactionary state to this proactive state where we're leaving 8 days out of 10 feeling like we got it all done.
That sounds great. And you did mention meditation, which I'm glad that you got that in there. A lot of people think that that's kind of woo-woo, but if I wouldn't knock it until you try it.
Oh, it's amazing.
It doesn't have to be a long session, but just go get alone, get quiet, relax, breathe. You don't have to have a guided meditation going on, but just some quiet time to get your energy rebuilt and kind of reflourishing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to show a screen here, and I'm hoping it's okay with you. We share some information. I'd like you to take a moment and talk a little bit about some of the video that you're doing for productivity and where they can find that. And I think our screen's showing up here. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I'd love to. So anyone, if they want to get some of these really practical, tactical tactics, I've created a video series called 1 Minute Productivity. And 2 to 3 times per month, I'm creating a really high-impact 1-minute video. So the time investment is relatively lightweight, but I'm taking the key concepts that have really made a big impact on the clients that I get a chance to coach. So check that out. It's a free resource. You can also check out my website as well. My direct line is listed, and my email as well. Any questions or comments? I love getting hey, really challenging productivity questions. Let me know. Also, too, on my website, I have a Proactive Lane Bootcamp, and about 4 times per year I have an open session. If you want to learn more about that, a lot of details, you can sign up for the waiting list. I'm going to have one probably start up sometime next year, but definitely here to serve you and your audience, Krista.
Thank you. And I was actually with a client last night at a fundraiser function and telling her about you being my guest today, and she was raving about how great your seminar was at ABC. So I want to congratulate you for this kind of this new endeavor that you have and all the passion that you have behind it and the good things that you're doing for so many people and their businesses.
Awesome.
So great seeing you, Steve. Good to have you. I'll
Thank
talk
you, Krista.
to you later. All right,
bye, guys.
Take care.
Great being here.
Yeah. So to my audience, I definitely want you to mark your calendar for the 3rd Wednesday of every month, but we have a few special things that we're launching here. Just this morning, Joyce and I were talking about doing more Krista Moore shows on an ad hoc basis. So 2 things. Next month, we have a very special Krista Moore show. We're going to do it the day before Thanksgiving because it is about gratitude and Thanksgiving. We're going to honor a very popular nonprofit organization called Dress for Success. It's international and it's nonprofit, but it's empowering women to achieve economic independence. And they provide a network for women to get support, to help with their resumes, to find jobs, and also to get professional attire and clothes that can be worn for the interview and throughout their work. So we're excited about that. We're going to do a Facebook Live at the same time we do the Krista Moore broadcast on GoToWebinar. And also I want you to go to a new Facebook page that we created this morning called Krista Moore Show Facebook page. And that's where I'm going to be doing these ad hoc videos and interviews in between the 3rd Wednesday of every month. So I look forward to that. So please go out there and like that, and then you'll get our live broadcast. So I just want to say that we care about you, we care about your success, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.